Thanks very much, Brian, and very good to be here. Good afternoon to everyone. It's a bit of a double act from us today, so I think first of all some introductions are in order. So I'll just quickly introduce myself and my colleague Ian Truckell. I'll say a few words, and then we'll just discuss what we're going to do as part of our project, working in Liz's project. So you've just heard about the wider project in Liz, and we're one of those work packages. So I'm Associate Professor in Environmental Informatics at Cranfield University. I'm actually on the governing board of DAFNI, so I've been following very closely the developments of DAFNI all the way through, and that's why the championships are so exciting, because that really allows us to see some use cases coming from that. I've actually been involved in this process and program going back through the years. Actually, I was involved in ITRC project back in the day, and so I'm obviously very pleased to participate in the championships. So my personal area of interest, speaking for myself, is very much the sort of interaction of the environment and infrastructure, trying to characterize risks to the infrastructure. So of course all our infrastructure is founded in the environment and is impacted on that. And in particular, I have an interest in sort of the geosciences and soil and so on, and looking at geohazards from that. A very strong interest in the informatics approaches to that and the gathering of lots of data sets to support an evidence base to that. But that's enough about me. Maybe Ian, if you'd like to just quickly introduce yourself.
Hi, so my name is Ian Truckell. I'm a geospatial technologist at Cranfield University. So I'll be working with Steve, as he mentioned, as a co-champion on Liz Varga's consortium. I have particular expertise in geospatial systems such as GIS, remote sensing, data visualization, and spatial data management in general. As Steve said, I worked with Steve on the original ITRC project, so that was looking at environmental geohazard assessments for climatic resilient infrastructure. I'm very much looking forward to being part of the DAFNI project, specifically helping develop thinking around linked data and the infrastructure research data ontologies. So I'm pleased to meet you, and I'll hand back to Steve.
Super, thanks Ian. So we have a program laid out for our bit, work package 2, which is looking at the data sets. Of course, we'll engage across the board with the other work packages and indeed the other championships. But what we're trying to look at is over the period of time between now and just before Christmas, the sort of the principal activities here, and then after Christmas there'll be sort of more advocacy type things going on. One of the things that we think is a key selling point, just before I dive into this for DAFNI, is going to be the vast bodies of data that are in there to support infrastructure modeling. We're pouring in, hundreds and hundreds of different data sets that people will want to access and integrate into their modeling approaches. And what we'd like is that for DAFNI to become effectively a one-stop shop for, if you want to do infrastructure modeling, this is where you go and you can get your data and you can build your models and run them. To do that, we need to have very clear structures for holding, for discovering the data. The discovery of data through metadata is going to be key. The way that we structure that data and make it available for models is important, whether it's for academic modeling or whether it's for stakeholders like the NIC or local authorities or ARC or whoever it is. And there are issues like these sort of fair data principles, fair being findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, and that's what we want. So I've listed here some of the challenges that we have. So these vast bodies of data are there. They're held in many different formats, so not just CSV, of course, but there's other formats, JavaScript object notation, GIS files, and so on. And what we're trying to do is to help the users actually discover and find this data and select it and organize it. And there may be a choice of one or more different data sets for a given theme. Those linkages between the data sets will be very helpful to guide people building these models. And also, we might want to sort of link to data sets that are out external and try and bring those together in our models. And indeed, we might want to promote ultimately some of the outputs of our modeling and our data sets to external applications as well. We're also very aware of various schemas that exist around the area of structured data, like City GML, Inspire, data specifications, and so on. So what we're going to try and do in this period of time now is, well, it's five things here, and then just summarize on the next page. But we want to try and help the DAFNI team develop a hierarchical classification of all of these data sets, these ancillary data sets being added. We see this as a huge strength of DAFNI. To do this, I'm very interested in the way that metadata is used, and there's been a selection of folk here are familiar with the DCAT metadata schema, but there's many other metadata schemas that people might want, so we need to look at mappings to those and to try to help people to discover this data. We want to try and work with the DAFNI team to help perhaps convey some of our knowledge, myself, knowledge of other data formats, the GIS, remote sensing, geo packages, open source data formats that data is coming in, and how we effectively unpack that and hold it or serve it up in appropriate forms. And talking of appropriate forms, also some of these data services, these REST data services, and I know this is something which is seen as a sort of a long-term objective for DAFNI, but it'll be interesting to start contributing to the thinking of how some of the Open Geospatial Consortium web services like WMS and WFS could play their part in infrastructure modeling in the future. So in other words, online data, not just a sort of a CSV file that you download. And lastly, this idea of these linkages between the different schema. And so I think our project is all about trying to identify these ontologies for linked data, the schema that hold these data sets. Could we have the next slide, please? Just a quick sort of summary, really. So, you know, in a summary, then I somehow seem to have got it down to 4 from 5 last time. But so I think the strength of what Ian and I can bring is to do with geospatial handling, and some of our knowledge about GI and geospatial can come in there. This idea of linked and hierarchical data mechanisms, how we can actually build linkages between those. We've got some quite nice ideas for visualizations. I should say that Ian and I have a responsibility with our virtual reality set up at Cranfield, so we'll try and think about some of the visualization of data, metadata and discovery, the schemas that we use, whether it's DCAT or links to other schemas, and maybe web services and access into the future. And then in common really with everyone in this meeting today, this area of advocacy of DAFNI. So we'll stand on the rooftops in our respective institutions and networks and explain what DAFNI is and try and bring people to that. I should also have added there feedback always to the DAFNI team as well, to try and help develop this extraordinary resource we've got. And really, I just feel obliged almost to mention environmental data alongside the infrastructure data as well. And so, I mean, there's various themes of data that we can bring, geosciences data that we can bring into the pot of data that we have. So that's a quick summary from us. Thanks.